Resident Evil 7 was my most anticipated game of all time. Everything about this game intrigued me, the way the visuals popped, creating this bleak, ominous atmosphere that demanded fear, the claustrophobic gameplay which made combat and exploration desperate, or the Go Tell Aunt Rhody theme song which permeated this sense of tragic demise and despair. However, there was one thing that grabbed my attention more than anything else, and that was the setting. Being trapped in a large mansion with a roster of evil baddies who wanted to gut you like a fish as you run away in fear was a feeling I'd been searching for since the very first Outlast game. Everything about this game hooked me, and the hype was only amplified by its fantastic demo, which added more and more pieces of intriguing lore and endings, making the 24th of January release date feel longer and longer with each subsequent replay. Fortunately, that day came very soon, and it was probably the most satisfying release I had ever experienced up until that point as a gamer. It was a game that reunited a fractured fanbase, a game that revived a speedrunning community, and most importantly, a game that introduced a whole new generation of players to the Resident Evil series. Gorgeous as ever in its RE engine and terrifying with its jaw-dropping graphics and gameplay. I beat Resident Evil 7 28 times in the span of 7 years, clocking in over 500 hours of gameplay, completing and speedrunning every piece of DLC, and trying to get the highest score on all the game modes. The game was simply infectious. I couldn't go outside with thinking about Resident Evil 7, couldn't study without thinking about Resident Evil 7, couldn't even take a shit without thinking about the Baker family and how many rounds I wasted with my handgun. It was a fantastic experience, which led me to seek out more and more Resident Evil games and get hyped for the future remakes and sequels. 7 years later, I am now an official Resident Evil fan, beating every single game in the RE engine multiple times, and even going back to the series' roots to experience the old school tank controls and fixed camera angles. However, there was something about these new Resident Evil games specifically that really scratched that itch that I've been searching for, and that's how it presented the experience. Each and every one of these games has a setting that's so endlessly enjoyable to explore and expertly crafted to be the most captivating environments they could be. For example, the Baker Mansion's past family photos and heirlooms, creating a direct juxtaposition for how sinister and sadistic these people are in the present. The village's macabre-esque castle and depressing house completely devoid of life. Or Raccoon City and how a location so thriving and civilized can be turned into an apocalyptic hellscape in the matter of a few hours. All these settings reek with a sense of mystery and ambient, creating an intriguing puzzle that you and only you can solve. What happened to this house, and why does it feel so deranged and twisted despite it looking so beautiful and scenic? Why does Beneviento's estate feel so bleak and thriving with history? What the hell is going on here? Well, if you want to find out, you gotta read all the notes and indulge in environmental investigations to piece together the lore and solve the mystery yourself. Even the villains are like this, giving you just enough screen time and just barely enough dialogue and subtext to warrant a complete thorough examination of their notes, possessions, and lines of dialogue to truly uncover who these people are and where their motivations lie. My favorite being Donna Beneviento in Village. I've never seen someone who literally has one entire sentence of dialogue be such a menacing and interesting antagonist. Because all of her lines are spoken in the dilapidated walls of her estate and the dried blood staining its floors. It's subtle in a way that feels genius and vaguely ambiguous simultaneously. These settings also create some of the most fantastically satisfying exploration I've ever experienced in any game, period. Because neglecting these environments and the treasures they hold will directly impact how you engage with some of the greater antagonists who've been stalking you and tormenting you throughout the entire game so far. For a quick example, I'll talk about Resident Evil 7. In this game, you gain access to repair kits used to fix the broken weapons you find scattered across the house. Not only are these weapons almost twice as good as the previous ones you discovered earlier in the game, they also take up way less space in your inventory, which is an absolute advantage you need to capitalize on if you want to survive. Rushing through these games will punish you because skipping out on these secrets will make these future battles feel damn near impossible if you're low on resources. This decision is honestly perfect because it'll lead to you realizing how fucking fun exploring these environments can be, and makes you realize how layered these maps are in the context of the gameplay. For example, when exploring, are you going to attack the enemies or avoid them entirely? Are you going to be loud when you traverse the lobbies and roam the halls? Are you perhaps going to discard items in your storage box so you can grab some extra resources or a potential key item? Exploration in these games is so much more than navigating a map and traversing an environment because it's layered with so many varied survival mechanics, which makes these games endlessly enjoyable and replayable. Okay, so now that we've established the basic fundamentals of what makes Resident Evil so fun and enjoyable, we're gonna move on to 3 games I recommend to anyone interested in the series or would maybe like to give them a shot. Resident Evil 7, like we mentioned, is a phenomenal action-adventure experience, and is in my opinion the most beginner-friendly introduction to the survival horror gameplay loop most Resident Evil games provide. It's challenging in a way that feels extremely fair and provides a wave of interesting characters and cool twists that will definitely invest you in this universe and keep you entertained throughout the entire game. Although, please be warned that there is a boat section that kind of drags the pacing towards the end of this game, to be honest. But if you push through that god-awful section, you'll leave extremely satisfied. Also, the DLC chapters and minigames are some of the most absurd things I've experienced in my 10 years of playing video games. With Ethan Must Die and Jack's 55th birthday being personal favourites I keep coming back to after all these years. Please play this game, it's worth your time. Next up, we have an odd choice for anyone who might know the series well, but it seems to be a favourite among the people I've recommended it to, and that's the Resident Evil 3 remake. This remake will get you accustomed to the more action horror side of Resident Evil, which puts more of an emphasis on combat and how you use your overwhelming roster of weaponry and ammunition to take down its biggest threats. While the exploration is heavily simplified, I feel like it's definitely the most beginner-friendly and accessible game to start off with because of how condensed the whole experience feels. The map is small and easy to navigate, the puzzles are simple and a nice foundation for what will be built upon in the other games, and the Nemesis Stalker enemy is the perfect introduction to how Stalker enemies in this series work. I've recommended Resident Evil 3 to 4 people over the years, and they all said out of all the games post 7, this was their favourite. So who knows, it might be yours too, it's worth a shot. So at last place, we have what's definitely the most intense and challenging experience out of the 3 we mentioned, and that's the Resident Evil 2 remake. This game is only for those who are looking for a challenging survival horror experience, because everything in this game is optimized to be as stressful and desperate as possible. The enemies seem immortal and unstoppable. Your ammo feels lacking and constantly draining, and Mr. X will destroy any foundations of confidence you had in your skill as a player or navigation in this environment. It's challenging in a way that's ridiculously fun and satisfying, and the tofu mode is something every human has to experience. Just look at this shit. However, I just can't recommend this as someone's first Resident Evil game just because of how unforgiving this experience can be at times. But if you're up to the challenge or have prior experience with survival horror, say in Outlast, Evil Within, or even Silent Hill, I implore you to take on this game and overcome the horrors that lurk in the Raccoon City police station. I wish you luck. Resident Evil is one of my favourite series, and it's something I feel like everyone should at least experience once. It's got great gameplay, great music, great survival mechanics, and fantastic immersion and atmosphere. Seriously, it's worth playing these games just for the atmosphere alone. I promise you, if you love immersion, you will love these games. I hope at least one person who watches this video at least tries out the series, because I promise you, if you've never played these games, you're in for a real treat. Play the Resident Evil games, dude. It's worth your time, I promise you. Like and subscribe if you like the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, guys.